Hey friend, Valerie Ling here, coming to you live on a Saturday morning in Sydney. It is a lovely, bright, sunny day, and I wanted to really thank you if you are listening thus far for following me on my journey and being a part of my community. And I wanted to give you today a little taste of my 6 R's, which is the framework that I use for my own burnout prevention, but with a little twist, kind of give you some behind the scenes insights into some of the things I struggle with when I'm trying to keep that going for myself. If you can hear me, I'm a little puffy because I am actually walking. I'm on a bit of a kickstart for myself in that I haven't really been doing the things that I know I need to do in, my goodness, not just the last few weeks, I actually think in the last few months. But first, if you have been following me for a while, you might have noticed that I've made some detours, and maybe it's a little confusing for you. It's not that confusing for me, but you might be wondering, how do you keep engaging with the content that I'm creating and producing, and what is she really on about these days? So here's a little bit of insight and background. As you know, or you may not know, I have a psychology practice in Sydney that deals with mental health issues and burnout. And we have a team of about 20 of us now. And I feel deeply, deeply proud and satisfied that that practice has incorporated many of my hopes and dreams and visions and practices as an individual therapist into the practice of the group. And so it's been a wonderful journey to replicate what essentially only one person, myself, could do for a few years to what now about a team of 15 practitioners can do. And in that psychology practice, they have crafted courses and processes and protocols and trainings to ensure that the quality and standards of how we practice are very much aligned to the philosophy and ethos of ensuring that we have a world without burnout, which provided me a couple of years ago with the freedom of forecasting when my daughter, I have a son, I have a daughter, and my son has finished school and my daughter is finishing school, gave me an opportunity a couple of years ago before the pandemic hit to sit back and forecast in the next 2 to 3 years, how would I want to see life, time with my husband, you can hear the dog, time with my husband, and what would be the sunset chapter, if you like, as we like to call it at home, the sunset chapters of our life. What do we want to not necessarily achieve, but give back to the world, God's world? So I've been faithfully and diligently forecasting that we would have pretty soon kids who still need us, but didn't need us in the same way that they needed us before. And at the time, I thought to myself, well, there are a couple of professions on my heart that tend to be full of burnout, and maybe we just accept that it's the churn and burn sort of profession, and nothing really can be done about it. You just sign up, have a good 10 years, and ship out and hope for the best. And some of those professions are linked to really the core person in my heart when I think of what drives me and motivates me. At the core, I am a psychologist who loves working with children. It's a deep sorrow of mine as a business owner that I don't get to do that much anymore. And my core desire is to see a world with children have the ability to connect with adults who can help them to thrive and grow. So that be your core health professionals, your psychologists, your doctors, your health professionals, the core formation adults in their world, teachers, educators, and other sort of professionals who are part of forming them, and the spiritual formation world, which is your pastors. I'm a Christian. My Christian faith is really important to me. I would say that it's through my relationship with Lord Jesus Christ that got me through some really dark periods as a child and as an adolescent. And I cannot imagine a world where that does not exist anymore. And so before the pandemic, I thought, okay, the private practice is running along, doing some nice things on its own. The individuals who service our clients are actually doing wonderful work, and the work is evolving. What can I do in the late season of my life? And then thinking about what my husband and I could do together as we finish this race together, if you like. And I thought, well, we'll go into workplace well-being, education, and consulting in the burnout space in these specific industries. And then, of course, the pandemic hit. Not only did the pandemic hit, but we had a horrible experience where we were in leadership. It blew up. It really left us grieving and scarred and at a loss. And so during those years of healing, about 2 years now, 2023, I really found it so difficult to go back to those beloved spaces that I'd found joy and courage and conviction working in, whether it was with educators and schools, but mainly our faith community and working with leaders in that space. And that was a huge impact for me in my world. I've always worked in that space, sometimes quietly, sometimes publicly, but I've never withdrawn from that space before. But for 2 years, I pretty much did just to heal, because everything that I would learn and tinker around and talk about and work with in faith communities would just open up wounds for me, and I really couldn't heal. So what I did was I sought to think and pray about where I could invest my focus, my time and energy. And of course, in the pandemic for 2 years, you couldn't go out, right, and do talks and things. So, going out to a whole schools were in chaos at the time. You'd just be putting more stress on them. If you tried to, do any more programs with them, it was inappropriate. Doctors' practices and, going out to meet them and things like that, that all went silent and just wasn't possible. And so I really thought about where could I contribute my time and focus, given that I had time and focus to give, even though we were in the middle of a pandemic. The private practice that I lead continued to be stable, well run, super people. I still had time and focus to give, and so I redirected my attention and focus to other private practice leaders whom I knew were really struggling in the pandemic, who were hit with all kinds of leadership and business issues, trying to get their team, their clients, their business through what would be a really rocky period. And I noticed my peers were starting to really struggle, burn out, feel discouraged, and many private practices during the pandemic shut down. And of course, I then felt deeply troubled. Private practice is closed. Where would the children go? We are one private practice. We cannot serve the millions of children in Australia and the millions yet to come through the system, because those born in the pandemic, I could see forecasting down the future, the issues that will arise during the pandemic would follow these kids through their lives all the way to age 25 and beyond. That sounds bleak, but it is what it is. You cannot ignore the impact, the developmental impact, the systemic impact that the pandemic has had, will have in the years to come. And deeply sad and sorrowed by the possibility that we would also lose psychologists and health professionals in the midst, especially the early career ones. Many of the early career professionals in health were being formed during the pandemic without adequate access to classes, to their peers, to practicing. It's a little bit like trying to learn how to swim in a box with sounds of the ocean and missing the joy of being with other people, the sound of the ocean, and seeing the little fishies and the reef and all of that to give you that contextual information. And so I decided to invest my time and focus into partnering with some private practice leaders, seeing them through the pandemic, the worst of it, seeing them through, the next few years, setting up strategy. And very pleased to say that all of my private practice leadership clients have doubled their team, doubled their revenue, doubled their profit, and I'm taking whole months off. It's pretty gobsmacked. Well, you're taking a whole month off. Most excellent. Why is that important to me? Because now I know they're going to be able to recharge, come back, lead their teams, and it'll be contagious. Other people will look in and say, hey, you guys need to keep going. We should switch recruitment. Double your team. Spending sleepless nights worrying about whether you're going to close shop, you're going to lose your house tomorrow. You're able to take time off. You're going out, dialoguing to see what the rest of your community needs. Bring it back into your team. If you can do it, we can do it too. And hence, regrowth can happen, right? In every traumatic incident or in any big incident that happens in a society, regrowth is really important. And so I've been working in that space really for the last 2 years. And now coming back out of healing and all of that stuff, coming back to my core passions and service. What has this got to do with my 6 Well, because coming back to that space, it's a little bit like when you have a wound that's just freshly healed. And it looks okay from the outside, right? But underneath it's still tender. And you know that, you just have to poke it a little bit and fresh stuff will spurt out. That's a bit gross. But that's how it feels. And what's this got to do with burnout? Well, I want to give you one equation that I think is hardly ever spoken about in the burnout space. So we know that burnout has got to do with mainly your relationship with your work environment. It cannot just be about self-care. It has to be that the work environment that you're in is a great match, it's resourcing, it's resourced, it's structured, there's communication, there's reward, and you're being able to do your work in a way that is sustainable. So, burnout is always about that system, but here it is. Here's the thing. In some systems, healthcare being one of them, I dare say clergy, I dare say the education system in a post-pandemic world, there's another element of moral injury. Moral injury is when you feel either you yourself are being subject to processes and waves and decisions that is actually really doing more harm than is doing more good. So as an example, during the pandemic, many doctors were experiencing moral injury when they had to make a decision as to who would get ventilators. Was it only the elderly? What about the children? And they were decisions that you were making that would have serious consequences. And it's a moral injury because a doctor, their entire formation, identity, their entire heart is about saving lives. So when you're put in a situation where you have to make those decisions, it's quite an injury. So moral injury is about making decisions that you know are actually going to put yourself or other people at risk, and it clearly is not aligned with what you believe. And so similarly for me, there is an element of moral injury, of having to make decisions about where to put my focus, where to put my attention. So the case of taking an oxygen mask from one group of people to another, not that I believe I'm a savior, but where your focus is, that's where you're going to put your energy, and that's the people you're going to most invest in. And so there's been a little bit of me, and I'm not sorry about this, basically spreading out my attention and focus to multiple groups of people that I took on board as my focus in this journey, if you like. Workplace well-being, some industries, the schools, the hospitals, the doctors, etc. My private practice community, leadership community, and now returning to the clergy space, which not only has some injurious impact on me still, or re-injury impact on me, but it also feels like, I can't actually spread my focus out everywhere. What would be the best way to do it? And so that sort of moral injury, plus injury, just spreading out yourself so thin, not only a big cause for stress, but it will lead to burnout. And what I've noticed for myself is that I'm physically and mentally tired after COVID. I'm definitely a different person, definitely a different human being. I found that my exercise practice had to shift. I wasn't really able to sustain daily exercise. If I did exercise every day, mind you, I'm not going to the gym every day, talking about mixing it up a little, going for walks and things like that. I'd often spend a whole weekend just being in bed. I've not been diagnosed or tested or anything. I just know my body well. I know that that's a definite change. So, these things have impacted some of my burnout practices. But I am determined to figure out for myself what works in this new season and in this new frame of reference. So let me go with you through my R's. Rest. R is for rest. Now, this is different from sleep. This is your stopping, regular stopping, whether it's not doing anything before you go to bed, what you do to recharge on the weekend, having decent time off where your brain and your body and your hands are not clocked on to your responsibilities that will bring stress, whether good or bad. So rest. Now, I've had to significantly increase this. It's been a massive adjustment for me because while my brain thinks I can keep going, in a post-COVID body, my body says, get real. We are no longer cooperating with you. And I collapse and I sleep. So for me, rest at the moment is I actually am figuring out new patterns. I actually have to stop more often in the day. I actually have to rest my brain as well, I'm finding. And one new thing for me that has come up, I don't know whether it's post-pandemic, post-COVID or whatever, but I'm more prone to numb my brain and rest by doing nothing, as in, watching a whole Netflix series or listening to podcasts. But guess what? While you could argue in some ways that that's resting my body and my mind, I was increasingly, sedentary, not moving at all, frozen. And because I work so much from home, that led to all kinds of other things. Sore backs, stiff necks, went to the physio, went to the podiatrist to kind of figure out, I was like, if I actually look at my data, like from my Apple Watch, I'm like hardly even standing up those days because I'm resting it's not a bad thing doing nothing, but there's too much of that now. And so I've moved my rest practices to things like going out in the garden and pulling up 5 weeds, or going to the kitchen, standing up, doing a couple of, washing 5 mugs that might be there, even though I could put it in the dishwasher, choosing to do that. Folding a couple of pieces of laundry. That's, for me, in my model, is called avocational rest. So meaning you're still resting your mind and clocking off, but by doing something, right? I could be working on a puzzle. I hate puzzles. I would never work on a puzzle. Sorry, no spatial skills. Scrap that. Crochet, crochet 3 rounds of my thing. So that for me is the way that I'm looking at rest now, which is to get some movement, stand up, but turn my mind to be really focused on an activity that's not stressful, that's fairly rhythmic and repetitive. So that's R for rest. Next R is reflect. R for reflect. Now, oh boy, this one has been a double whammy for me. In my quest to figure out my meaning, purpose, direction, healing from all that stuff, what am I doing? What are the people in my heart? What's my ikigai now? My reflective space was so busy. All the journal dumps were, dumps of ideas and possibilities and laments, and it's all a real hodgepodge of things in there. So R is a reflect is a huge weakness. I mean, huge. It's like my top 3 R's that I need to keep an eye on. And when I reflect, I get more reactive. Like I get hyper energetic, going down things that really don't matter very much. And so it's really bad when I don't reflect. And I'm finding, and I had to find that my R, my reflect, was becoming more reactive. So I'm doing something really simple these days. I'm just in pride and joy, pride and joy, pride and joy. It's my little twist on the gratitude exercise. Just noticing in my day what gave me a real sense of pride. What I'm really proud of, right? Proud that I cooked 2 massive turkey legs in a slow cooker. Got it on offer, $7, $7 meal that fed the family for not that long, but 2 days. We like to eat a lot of meat. Oh, proud, so proud. What brings me pride? Oh, what brings me joy? What are the new things I'm discovering that brings me joy? I don't have little children anymore. I still have a cute puppy, and he does bring me joy. But is that all in my life that brings me joy? And attending to the things that make me smile, the things that make me breathe in a little bit deeper, and naming those things when I'm reflecting. So just noticing pride and joy moments. So that's my latest R for reflect. Then comes R for reconnect. Reconnect for me is ensuring that you are meeting up with the relationships that are nourishing to you, not just your work connections, not just your network connections, and not just your family or friends whom you are giving to. It's what are the friendships and the relationships that are pouring back into you. One of the big ones that I've let slip in the last few months is my professional appointments. I have a practice every year. The doctor tells me I don't need to do this, and maybe I haven't really done a blood test every year. This is I don't know. But anyway, I get top and tailed by the GP, by the doctor, family doctor. And that was disrupted because it was connected with sad feelings from moving from a place that we thought we would be forever or for a long time, coming back and having to figure out, well, who's my doctor, who's my physio, who's my gyro, who's my podiatrist? Do I just go back to the old ones? Do I make some new ones? And I've just sat in that space procrastinating. So reconnect for me are my professional reconnect relationships that I've really been working on, and noticing that I just made it too hard. I just made it too hard because mainly I was dealing with some hard feelings that I've moved so much in my life. I think I went to like 9 schools and had 21 moves or something like that. And so every move comes with its dump of, stuff. But hey, doesn't have to be that hard, you know? You ask a couple of friends where they go, and you pick up the phone, and you make the appointment, and at least you get top and tailed. And if it's a great connection, you keep going. If it's not a great connection, rinse, repeat, do again. I found a fantastic podiatrist. Love the podiatrist, right? Podiatrist in the past, I used to just go once in a while. I love this podiatrist. He had so much value to my world, taught me how to walk again, gave me insight into how I don't know, how did I grow a whole shoe size? Have I always just been wearing the wrong shoes? Who knows? Okay, so I've been working on reconnect with my professional support for myself to ensure that I don't complicate it. Yeah, just kind of go through that rhythm and that routine. Restore. Okay, restore for me has got to do with knowing your why, knowing who you're becoming. And it can be many things. It can be the purpose, the direction, the meaning that you get from the work that you do and ensuring that you're putting those things up front. But for me, more and more and more importantly, restore for me is got to do with my own faith, coming back to my relationship with Jesus because I'm a Christian. And I've really struggled in the pandemic with this, and also because of the wounding. It's not a bad title to call the event, the wounding. And so I was struggling, found a nice rhythm, and then it became not enough. Now, hear me out. I'm not by any chance your, star pupil when it comes to opening up your Bible, quietly sitting and reading and praying and all of that. I'm not your star model. I have to work very, 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 very hard for it. But what I was noticing was I put something in because I knew I had to do it. I moved to read your whole Bible in 3 years reading plan, and I did that, and it was a good thing for a period and a season, but it was no longer engaging me, and it just became robotic and monotonous. And so, you know, I'm in the process of looking at my young adult children and thinking, oh, well, I'm kind of gonna miss you, as well as going, I super, super still want to control your movements. Like, why won't you let me track your movements anymore? How do I know if you're okay? Flip flopping between that wanting to let them go, but then control. And so, what I've done for myself in the restore phase is I've attended to that desire to want to stay connected with my children, but I need to moderate that by flipping over to a devotional that is a 1 year read through the Bible with the specific focus of then praying for your kids for a whole year. And it's been wonderful, wonderful. If I don't hear from them and they're out in the world and I have no idea, well, I've prayed for them today. So it's been good for me. That's my restore. Resource. Now, resource has got to do with how you do go about doing your work. Remember how I was saying it is a relationship with your work. So, to what extent do you have some practices in your work that is overachieving, perfectionistic, stress bound, not wanting to delegate all of that kind of stuff, the resource. And for me, at the moment, in the resourcing space, um, I'm noticing that it's not so much how I do my work in terms of my work practices. I'm fairly disciplined when it comes to, clocking off, not checking my email and all of that. For me, it was the type of work that I was trying to do that really needed to be done in another way. So for me, it was my Zoom consults, right? A lot of my Zoom consults, poor ergonomics, just not setting myself up well, sitting on really cold chairs, not moving much, having the back-to-back Zooms, but then not thinking about things like going to the toilet or having some water, just drinking coffee, that sort of a thing. I've really had to look and work on that because when you're not hydrating well, when you're not set up in your posture to Zoom things well, you'll get, it has a flow on effect. It affects how you feel physically, and then it affects how you interpret your events cognitively, and then emotionally you're impacted. So I've been working on that. It's really hard because working from home, it's not like I can just go and put an extra room, but with bigger human beings, we kind of outgrown some of the working spaces in our home. And so I'm working on that. It's never perfect. You work on it. And then comes the replenish. Now, again, I'm not doing fantastic in this one at the moment. Replenish has got to do with your sleep, your eating, your exercise, what your body actually really needs. And I've not been doing so fantastic in my eating and in my moving. Eating mainly because I don't know. I don't know. I seem to have come into the season where I talk like my older Asian relatives, but the cold things, cold yogurt that I love, eating berries and cold fruit salads and things like that. I'm just turned off by it. I don't know. It's just hit me all of a sudden. I'm like, I do not want to put that blob of cold yogurt in my mouth. Nor do I want to have the feeling of raw fruit in my mouth. Just turned off it. So, needing to look, this one, guys, I have no idea. Process of experimenting. I haven't figured it out. Warm fruit. I don't know. Sounds like a lot of effort. I have to watch a couple of TikTok hacks to figure out how to do that one. And movement. I've not been moving. So here I am walking today. A couple of things, getting vitamin D because I tend to lack that. I know that. My doctors keep telling me that all the time. And getting just some joyful movement, not making a big deal about it, not making it a goal, not counting steps, not just for the purpose, getting vitamin D, moving my body because I know what it does to all of the neurotransmitters when I do that, and just enjoying the feeling of moving and moving. Hey, I'm going to put a link to my friend's podcast on walking. I had a chat with her. She's talking about some really amazing things. Like one of the things I'm just doing today because of her podcast is just moving and walking in a different direction from what you expect and noticing and feeling what that's like. So I am here in an oval and I've just been zigzagging while I chat with you, partially to avoid the traffic, but also just to give it a go and see what does it feel like when I zigzag across an oval. So there you go, folks. Back to basics, a little bit of a history of how things got to this point, journeying with you as we try to do the things that we know we need to do for a world without burnout and so that we don't burn out. Cheerio. Have a great Saturday. Talk to you soon.